Tell me if you've heard this one before. Two characters start off as friends, but then character B outgrows character A and then becomes a full on villain. Then they lose to character A, who has become the hero, and then character B, the now villain, joins the side of good to fight a greater evil. And while this villain at first was this big thing to overcome, they've been toppled in power and have to change as a person in order to become stronger. And they try to reclaim their former glory of being a top dog. And while other characters acknowledge that this former villain is now good and strong, the plot will never allow them to win or even outshine the hero of the story. Some love it, some hate it, but it's a tale that anybody who has watched an anime knows. Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z, Bakugo from My Hero Academia, Zuko from Avatar The Last Airbender. And the one who most exemplifies this is the character of Jack Atlas, who, in my opinion, not only has the most growth, but is also the best written character throughout the show. And I don't see him get talked enough about the same way that Zuko or Bakugo do. To a normal person who hasn't seen it, Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's comes across as a meme, card games on motorcycles, but among the fans is probably one of the favorites, and that is in no small part not just to the characters, but also the character dynamics. On the surface, it's easy to write him off as another Kaiba clone. He's loud, he's arrogant, he's brash, he plays a color-themed dragon that's all about power. But what if Kaiba self-actualized? What if Kaiba never had any money? What if Kaiba felt remorse for the things he had done? You start adding all these what ifs, and then you're left with basically a whole new character. So I wanted to get into the journey of Jack Atlas and talk about why he's great, an underrated character in an otherwise critically acclaimed show. And I'm going to be talking about choices both made in the sub and the dub version because both of them I think supplement the character in different ways, but also that's how I watched it. I watched the dub on 4Kids as a teenager, and then in the West we never got the events past the Grand Prix dubbed. So I had to find it on Kiss Anime and adapt to the name changes. Rest in peace, Kiss Anime. You were great until people started posting you on TikTok for clout and it drew too much attention. So, without further ado, let's talk about the Master of Faster, the Sultan of Speed. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, non-binary people of all ages, let's talk about the king of writing duels, Jack Atlas. Starting chronologically in the events that happened before the first episode, Jack Atlas's parents are killed in the events of Zero Reverse, a big inciting incident that killed a lot of people and broke Domino City into two different areas. The haves in Neo Domino City and the have-nots in the satellite. The place where Jack Atlas lives and where laws are passed into what is essentially legalized apartheid. It's there that Jack Atlas learns how to duel and where he meets Crow Hogan and Yusei Fudo, other main characters of the show. These young boys help him develop his dueling skills, and from dueling is where he develops his whole persona of being the king of games. Going into his teen years, the boys meet Callan, or whatever it is on the sub. Now, even though this serves as backstory for Callan and his tragic ending, I think it is equally important to Jack's backstory. Because as I mentioned before, Jack is an orphan living in a destitute area with no real prospects. It's heavily implied that in the satellite, the only reason anyone learns how to read or do arithmetic is because it's needed in order to duel. It is here that they form Team Satisfaction, where they plan to take down all the rival duel gangs and take over the satellite to run it as they see fit. They take down virtually every team member, and soon enough, they take over the satellite. And so, while sure, he has the hubris to call himself king at a very young age, this era of his life is the first time that he realizes, wait, I can do this. Like, it's not just blowing smoke. He's not just some guy talking a big game. He is a part of a gang that defeats everyone else in his hometown. If there's anyone in all of the satellite that can make it out and compete with the big leagues in Neo Domino City, it's one of the four of them. Unfortunately, this causes an uproar and draws some attention, which causes Sector Security to up their game and get new cards, new gear, so that they can further protect and serve the public. At the same time, Callan isn't satisfied with just being the best duelist in Satellite among the citizens. He wants to take down Sector Security. At this point, Jack and Crow decide that Callan has gone too far and that it would be unwise for, four guys to take on an entire police state. Hey, Callan, maybe instead of beating other gangs and humiliating them, you band it together and convince them that the oppressive police state is the actual bad guy. And then maybe you could stand a chance with some class solidarity. Like, according to this, there's like 20 different sectors and they all have like at least 4 team members. But even if they all had only 4 team members like y'all do, you would still stand a better chance of instead of, trying to rule your corner of nothing and protect your slice of nothing. Crow leaves to get involved with helping orphans and become Robin Hood, as every good comic relief character does in these kinds of shows. Jack isolates himself away into his throne room in an abandoned theater, which I just love how much his love for theatrics and drama and character continue throughout the series, even when he's by himself. It's like a wrestler persona where he just does the most over the top dramatic stuff. I love it. Yusei calls everyone back together to stop Callan from doing something stupid because he is prepared to take on the entire military police state. Everyone pleads with Callan, but he is eventually arrested, but not before looking back and thinking that Yusei sold him out to the police. But that's a different video essay for a different character for a different day. Back to Jack Atlas, there isn't much explicitly said during this time, but Yusei and him make new friends, and Crow goes on helping orphans. And after the events of Team Satisfaction, both Yusei and Jack agree that if either of them are going to make something of themselves, they need to make it out of the satellite and into New Domino City. And in order to do that, you need to make a dual runner. During this time, they learn all about dual runners and scrap together parts and junk in order to make a working dual runner. And it really seems like things are going to work out for the best. However, due to an unseen altercation, Jack and Yusei start to fight about the best way to proceed, and it's at this point that we finally get to talk about his deck. You see, Jack uses a power deck. His monsters all have high attack points, they deal a lot of damage, and they punish weakness. His ace card Red Dragon Archfiend literally destroys any monster that does not attack during the battle phase. And when it does attack, it destroys all monsters in defense position on your opponent's side of the field. His strategy in the beginning is to bring out a bunch of power and keep applying pressure in order to make you crumble. Yusei's deck, on the other hand, is very speed-based. Yusei's strategy is to get a bunch of monsters with low attack points together and then create something greater than the sum of their parts. And his ace card, Stardust Dragon, is a card that will literally sacrifice itself in order to stop somebody else from being destroyed. The foil could not be more apparent, but it's not appreciated enough. I really love a blue speed-themed leader with a red-themed power-based lancer. It's stated that the reason they fight is because they don't agree on how to reach their end goals. The disagreement escalates into a duel, and in one of the few times in Lancer history, the Lancer wins. Jack beats Yusei and tells him that his deck has no balance, and that he will never be able to win and get ahead unless he works it out. And the thing that makes Jack such a great character in the context of the story right from the start, he serves as a foil to Yusei, who is loyal to a fault and he is guided by his feelings. But the series as a whole is great about showing that the power of friendship is not enough. Yusei has his friends, yes, but at this point, he's not utilizing them to build up his own power. He's a Tyrannosaurus Megazord without his Triceratops. He cares about his friends, yes, but he's not letting them help. He's still trying to do everything himself. Yusei tried to save Callan all by himself because he felt he was the only one who could. By the time he reached out to Jack and Crow, Callan was too far gone. He failed to save Callan, and he is going to keep failing if he doesn't step up. After they fight, Jack storms off to have his edgy loner moment, sitting on his throne in his kingdom of isolation. And it's at this point that he's confronted by Jaeger, who comes from New Domino City. Jaeger tells Jack that they've been watching him and they want to make him a star. They want to groom him to be the next king of games. All he has to do is steal Yusei's Stardust Dragon card and a dual runner that they built, and then use it to ride through the garbage disposal chute during maintenance, and then he'll get to New Domino City where no one will know about his past, where he came from, and nobody will be able to say anything. Anybody who can say something will be stuck in the satellite. He's not just going to have a fresh start, but a chance to prove himself. And it's easy to judge Jack for what he's about to do, but honestly, I kinda get it. At this point of the story, he's 17 years old. One of his best friends is in prison, and he had a falling out with his last true friend. Not only did they fight, but he won. He beat Yusei. Jack has earned his street cred being part of the gang that took on the satellite, and he beat the only other person in that gang he cares about beating. He has proven that he is the undisputed best in his hometown, and what does he have to show for it? Now all that he has left is an abandoned theater, a throne that was probably used in a community theater play, and roaches. He has no other way of making money. He has lost all of his friends. Even if he wanted to make a quote-unquote honest living, the only way that we're shown how people make money in the satellite is to work in a recycling center. You can't even become a class trader and join the police force if you were born in the satellite. So dueling is the only thing he knows how to do, and at this point he has to do something. Knowing that Yusei is loyal to a fault and that their friend Raleigh has been trying to bridge the gap between the two of them, Jack sees this as an opportunity, calling Raleigh to extend an olive branch. The next day, Yusei notices that Raleigh isn't there, and then he receives a video call from Jack telling him that dueling gangs have taken Raleigh. Yusei rides over to the dock where Jack said he is, and he finds Jack brooding over the ocean, staring out. Yusei asks him about Raleigh, and Jack points out to the ocean where Raleigh is tied up in a dinghy boat, out in the ocean with waves knocking him around. Jack tells him that unless Yusei goes to save him, the tide will take him away and drown. Yusei asks what the deal is, and Jack says that he finally has a chance. A chance that he knows Yusei will never take because he's weak. Remember, at this point, Jack is all about power. He is very much a might makes right kind of person, and Yusei still has not developed into the kind of person that can prove him wrong. Jack tells him about his chance, about how he has an opportunity to make it to the city and become the next king of games. He offers Yusei the chance. He tells him about the garbage chute, and he tells him that he can take his runner and his Stardust Dragon and escape to New Domino City, if only he would let Raleigh drown. Yusei doesn't say a word. He just takes off his belt containing his dueling deck and then swims out to the ocean to save Raleigh. Jack then takes the Stardust Dragon card and rides off with a duel runner that Yusei and his friends worked hard to build. I love the imagery here. Jack riding through a garbage heap on the back of a runner that he took by force, that his friends built with teamwork. He is using the work of others to pull himself up. So now, in real time, 2 years later where the series actually start, Yusei has built a new duel runner, and he is out for revenge and to get his Stardust Dragon cards back. Jack appears on TV and is adored by his fans, toying with opponents that he could easily beat in one turn, but again, one for the theatrics, loves to entertain an audience. Raleigh finds a chip for Yusei to be the cherry on top for his new duel runner in order to finally make the run that Jack made before to escape. Now, in the dub, Jack leaves this chip out as a trap for Raleigh to find and get them arrested, but then it's never brought up again. In the sub, Raleigh steals the chip and is found by Sector Security, but regardless, the chip is the inciting incident that starts the series off. True poetry that Raleigh is the catalyst that gets Jack to New Domino City, and now he is the reason that Jack is going to get to the city. The difference here is that Jack took it by force, but here, having grown, Yusei's friends are lifting him up through the scrap. They are choosing to help him, and he is using that help and their abilities to pull himself up. Yusei, however, will look back and lend a hand to get them up too. Yusei makes it through the trash chute, and who should he find waiting for him on the other side but Jack? They wax poetic about their past, who they used to be, and Jack pulls out Stardust Dragon card. The card Yusei lost when he sacrificed his chance at a new life in order to save his friend. Jack tosses the card saying that he no longer needs the symbol of this sacrifice. He has made it on his own. He made it through his own power. Yusei tosses the card back to him, saying that he wants to earn the card, that he wants to beat Jack and win it back fair and square. They line up to start the writing duel, and I do want to point out that in the sub, the runner that Jack is using here is the one that he stole from Yusei way back when, but just extremely heavily modified. But in the dub, the one that he stole had broken down. This is the new one made from the money and prestige that he got from being a champion. Personally, I don't know which one I like more. Like, first of all, the two look completely different. So if it is the same one, then it's kind of a Ship of Theseus situation where it's like, okay, is it really the same one? But if it's a new one, then I like it because it fits with his character arc at the time, that he exploited the work of others to benefit himself, and then once he was done with it, he tossed it aside. I also really like how Yusei's new dual runner is red, like Jack's Red Dragon Arch, showing that in order to get to this point, he had to take the good qualities of Jack that he saw and then combine it with his own personality, which is the white accent. While Jack's runner is completely white, like Yusei Stardust Dragon, literally riding around on the sacrifice that he made. They begin their duel, and I'm not going to give a play-by-play of every single move and card that they make, but I am going to point out that I really like the banter between them in the dub. Like, they're old friends reunited, but it's not so good. The comments they make, remembering each other's moves, remembering their cards. Jack taunts Yusei for his self-sacrificing nature and his refusal to fight back and stand up for himself. Jack is mocking the person that Yusei used to be, which is a good world building this early on in the series. He's making fun of the person that lost to Jack, the person that lost his ace card and his duel runner. Jack is in the wrong because, trying to drown a child is wrong, but he is in the right that the person Yusei was back then wouldn't have made it this far, fulfilling his Lancer role of making the main character a better person. At one point during the duel, Jack summons both his ace Red Dragon Archfiend and Yusei's Stardust Dragon card. However, using some trap card that is super specific to this dueling situation anime BS, Yusei is able to get his Stardust Dragon back on his side of the field, and then they duke it out. However, dear viewer, all is not what it seems. Anytime that Stardust and Archfiend battle, both Yusei and Jack feel a pain in their arm. Eventually, their arms start to glow, and a giant red, one might even say crimson, dragon appears in the stadium of their duel. Yusei wants to call off the duel, but Jack, ever the arrogant king, wants to continue. He activates a speed spell to which Yusei activates a trap card, but before either one can resolve, the energy from the Crimson Dragon sends their duel runners flying and ends the duel preemptively. Sector security arrives and Jack is holding his arm, revealing a glowing red mark. He looks at Yusei, who has a similar glowing red mark on his arm. Jack is shocked to see the mark on Yusei, and Yusei demands an answer, but Jack just stares as the police arrest him. Jack recovers from his injuries, which, as I'm reading this, I'm like, wait, this is gonna happen a lot. He awakes and finds Goodwin, the man who got him to New Domino City. He asks him about the duel. Goodwin, being his groomer and keeper, tells him to forget about it and that nobody will know. Know what? Jack asks. And they replay the footage, and it is shown that before the duel ended, Yusei played a trap card that would have won him the duel. And Jack doesn't take this well, because not only is he shaken that Yusei also has the same birthmark he does, the thing that he was told makes him special, he also lost to the only person who could blow up his whole spot. Even though he would never do this, Yusei could out Jack's whole past of being born in the satellite, and it would lose him his status as the king, the respect of his fans, and everything that he got from sacrificing his whole life. It's at this point that Goodwin reveals to Jack what the birthmark means, and what is to come. Basically, the birthmarks show that they are reincarnated warriors that once defeated a great evil that threatened to consume the world into darkness. Your standard, typical anime plot. But Jack hears this and starts to piece some things together. The gears start turning in his head. He becomes determined to be the hero, the one and only. Even though there are 5 signers, he will be the one to bring everyone up. And it's really fitting that he has the wings of the Crimson Dragon birthmark, because he is going to rise above everyone, carry everyone out. And in order to do that, he has to beat Yusei in a public duel and cue the tournament arc. In order to get Yusei to join the Fortune Cup, Goodwin kidnaps his friends and tells him that if he wants them to stay alive, he'll join. Yusei eventually confronts Goodwin and demands their safety. It's there that Jack reveals that he figured out Goodwin's plan, that in order to get Yusei to come to New Domino City, period, he used Jack as a pawn in order to serve as motivation to get Yusei to leave his home 2 years ago. Jack knows of Yusei's fighting spirit, so Jack tells Goodwin to let their friends go because he wants to fight Yusei head on. No distractions, no motivations, just pure, unfiltered dueling prowess. And the tournament continues. Spoiler, it comes down to the main character and the rival character. And they duke it out when all of a sudden the Crimson Dragon comes along and drags them to a different dimension to show them the evil to come. Dark evil consumes the world. Again, your standard anime plot. Once again, they wonder if they should continue, because especially in this weird dimension, the damage they take is real, as is customary in order to increase the stakes in every Yu-Gi-Oh series. But ever eager to prove his might, Jack continues a duel. And not learning from his mistakes, he continues with the counter to the combo that Yusei used from last time that let him beat Jack. However, Yusei also has a counter and ultimately wins the duel, causing Jack to spin out and lose control of his duel runners right as the Crimson Dragon spits them back out into their dimension. Once they come back, nobody knows what happened except that Yusei is off his runner and his life points are 0, leading everyone to see that Yusei has defeated the Master of Faster. The king of turbo dueling has been dethroned. Yusei approaches Jack, telling him that he lost against his own pride. Jack tried to recreate the conditions that lost him the duel last time so that he could prove that he could overcome it. But in doing so, he became predictable. He just became so blinded by his own rage that it just caused him to lose. His duel runner destroyed, Jack is carried off to the hospital away from everyone, and this is when his redemption begins. You see, even though he lost, he was still the king, and nobody was expecting him to lose. So obviously, at the height of somebody's career, you make a documentary about them. And so a party for the premiere of his doc was underway, and it's at this point that there are people beginning to ask questions. One reporter even revealing that she knows that Jack is from the satellite. It's at this premiere that we meet Carly, who is a very important character for Jack's character arc. When we meet Carly, she is an upstart reporter living out of her car and proud of herself for making it out of the slums of New Domino City. Her boss asks her to get a big scoop so that he can sell newspapers, and she wants to get herself on the map. In order to do this, she decides that she needs to get close to Jack Atlas. I like this because at this point in the story, Jack represents what Jack used to be. Young, hungry, and ambitious. She is willing to do whatever it takes to make it to the top. Jack is sitting in his hospital room, sulking, isolating himself away from everyone. He decides to leave. To where? No idea. But as soon as he walks out, he runs into Carly, pretending to be a nurse so that she can get close to him. It's there that Officer Trudge, being mind-controlled by the new big bad of the season, the Dark Signers, confronts Jack and wants to duel him. Carly warns him not to because he is dangerous, having seen what the Dark Signers can do against Yusei. And also, Jack's arm is broken. That he physically can't duel. Jack, determined to do anything that Yusei can do, but better, tells Carly to draw for him, and he will beat this Dark Signer foot soldier and get all the information he can out of them. Their first team up, good for them. Of course they win, but the duel is too much excitement for Jack, who collapses, which then Carly takes him outside in a stretcher and hides him in her apartment. At this point, Jack doesn't know that Carly is only trying to get close to him because she's trying to get a story. In fact, nothing about the story implies that he thinks about her at all. When his assistant comes to collect Jack, he tells her to leave him alone, and it's like he doesn't really think of her at all other than a means to escape. As soon as he gets a moment alone, he runs away from her apartment, just walking around sulking, reliving his loss and Yusei's words, "You lost against your own pride." When Jack tries to ride the monorail, he realizes he doesn't know how to get on. In fact, he doesn't know how to do much of anything. The entire time he's been in New Domino City, he's had people do things for him. He's had things taken care of because of who he is. Now he has nothing and has to do it himself. Carly convinces him to hang out with her for a little bit, and Carly tries to get him to open up about his life. After a day at the theme park, a little boy comes up to Jack, recognizing him from the disguise, and tells him that he's rooting for him through it all. Jack roots away, staring off again, haunted by Yusei. While getting them a drink, Carly runs into another reporter who leaked that Jack is from the satellite. And during an argument, Jack overhears that Carly is just trying to get a story out of him. At this point, Jack walks away and Carly tries to think of where he could have gone when she realizes that all of his sulking and brooding has been in one direction, the Seattle Space Needle looking tower that he's always looking at. Carly finds him at the tower looking at the ocean when she points out that this is the highest point in the city where you can't see the satellite at all. Jack then professes the shame that he feels, literally turning away from the source of his shame. He betrayed his friends, left behind everything he ever knew for fame and glory, only for it to be not only part of a larger scheme, but also for it to be taken away in one fell, fickle swoop. So now, what does he have? He doesn't have his friends, he doesn't have his fame, he doesn't have anything left. Carly then tells him that if he knows he screwed up, if he knows why he screwed up, then he should move forward. He can't go back and change it, but he can find his own path moving forward. Jack imagines all of his old friends greeting him, happy to see him, and there's a part of him that knows that this is a fantasy, that he can never have this again, or at the very least, it won't be the same as it was. They don't have to forgive him. They don't have to let go of what he did to them. But here's Carly meeting who Jack is after all of that. She's meeting the guy who is saying, "I'm not going to be that anymore." This is the guy who fell on his ass and is now realizing that all the bad stuff he did was not worth it. And yeah, in real life and in a different kind of show, change and growth takes a while, but in a 22-minute cartoon about card games on motorcycles, this is when that change happens and when it starts to take place. She decides not to publish any story and that she's going to be friends with Jack. And what I really like and what's really cool about Carly is that when she meets him, it's after the change and she likes it and decides, "I'm going to stick around for this." I have old friends that I love dearly, and those friends have stuck it out with me when I was not my best self, and who have stayed with me after I've grown and matured. But there's something really nice and reassuring about meeting new people who only know this version of me that I have worked really hard to grow into, and they decide that, yeah, they like it and they're going to stick it out. It's a different kind of friendship that feels good because the new friends you make can represent the person you become. And even though he finds her annoying, Carly is a good person, which is a reflection of this new person that Jack decides he's going to be. So now, going forward, Jack has Carly by his side, helping him fight whatever obstacle comes his way. That is until Carly dies and gets brought back as a villain. I'm going to be honest, I really don't know how else to say it other than just summarizing it like that without making this video like 5 hours long. No, but seriously, she gets taken down by one of the bad guys and ends up falling into darkness and is giving a hummingbird god card. But actually, an important thing to note here is that while searching through the rubble, Jack finds Carly's glasses and thinks her dead and gone, and now decides that it's important for him to fight back against the oncoming apocalypse. It's only when he meets up with the Darksiders that he recognizes, and suddenly his mission goes from one of revenge to one of rescue. They duel in a special kind of game where the damage they take is real, and Jack plays with caution at first, not wanting to hurt her, but eventually that leads to Carly getting the advantage, and then making him almost crash for real, which would lose him the duel. Jack keeps trying to break Carly out of her spell to get through to the real Carly, and at first he succeeds, but the darkness doesn't like that and takes over. When he almost crashes, Jack wakes up in a bed. He looks in the mirror and finds that the whites of his eyes are gone, just like the Darksiders. Dark Carly is there, and she tells him that this could be their life. This could be the beginning of their rule. Jack would be the king of the underworld, leading them, respecting them, and they would respect him just like they did before he lost a duel with Yusei. This really would be the best of both worlds for him. He would have the love and glory and flair for theatrics that he loves, but also he would have his friend, somebody who loves him side by side. Jack losing his fame and glory was important because it showed him that none of that stuff matters if you don't have somebody to share it with. But how much does that stuff matter when you do have somebody to share it with? And that's what's being offered here. It's a chance to fall back, to have everything you wanted like it was before, but better. But of course, ever the hero, Jack breaks free from mind control. He does some anime card BS that normally would allow him to win the duel, but instead he makes it so the duel ends in a tie, and they'll both lose. They both will succumb to the darkness, but neither one will contribute to the destruction of the world. However, Carly breaks through the mind control one last time to activate a trap card that makes Jack win the duel. He holds her in his arm as she fades away into the darkness. Shout out to the 4Kids censorship. This marks the first time that Jack doesn't go for glory. He doesn't go for victory in the game. He doesn't even play with his food before he eats it, but aims to save Carly's life because he loves her. Now, I go back and forth whether he means this as romantic love or platonic love, because Carly absolutely means it in a romantic sense and throughout the rest of the series. However, it's not really clear that Jack knows what romantic love is. This doesn't come up again in the video, but I do want to point out that the rest of the series, Carly gets sidelined to be a comic relief character, and Jack completely forgets about this love business, which to be fair is something most 18-year-olds do. Hey man, how's it going with that girl? Hey man, I want to tell you, me and this girl, we started dating. It's great. I love her so much. Things are awesome. I'm so happy.
A few moments later.
Hey man, what happened with you and that girl? Who? Jack once more promises to avenge her and teams up with Yusei and Crow to defeat the dueling god of the season. Because of course, this is a shonen. Rival character gets knocked down, but not before leaving Yusei a trap card that helps him win the duel. This half of the series ends with Jack, Yusei, and Crow beating God, saving the world, and building the bridge between the satellite and New Domino City, thus ending decades of prejudice and apartheid overnight. I'm not kidding, they never bring it up again in all the terrible things that were done to the people in the satellite. Now, you'd be right in thinking this seems like a natural stopping point for the series, but instead we meander for a bit in the series. I couldn't find anything to back it up, but apparently one of the creators left, and so the one left started writing all these filler. It actually is pretty good filler, so all the characters act like themselves, and even though it is considered filler, and if any guide you look up says to skip it, there's some stuff in here that's very interesting that I think contributes to Jack's character arc. One episode in particular, a loan shark episode. One of the more interesting episodes, only considered filler because it didn't happen in the manga, but I think it's a great demonstration of Jack's character. You see, he's been living in New Domino City, so he has bougie tastes. So he has this blue eyes black coffee. And it's expensive, and Crow tells him to get a job to pay for it. Jack then goes around getting fired from a bunch of different jobs. This demonstrates two things. One is that Jack does not value money, which is not to say that Jack does not care about money, but money is a pointless thing to him, which makes sense because he went from growing up at a satellite where people didn't have money, so they exchanged goods and services for other goods and services, and then from there he went to be Goodwin's Pawn, where all of the bills were taken care of. He never had to learn how to do a line of balance or set up autopay. The other thing is that he was right in that he only knows how to duel. And in a world that values dueling and every problem can be solved by playing a children's card game, it has got him pretty far. When you combine these two things, it makes for an interesting outlook on life. One that on the surface seems naive, but on a deeper level makes sense for the world that has been built. Jack so far is good at the one thing that the world values. Traffic is literally diverted so that people can play a card game, and Jack has gotten to where he is by his merit. Ancient Dragon card aside, money never really helped him get ahead, but a lack of money caused him to hurt his friends, to leave everything behind and go through the pain he went through. Throughout his odd jobs, he meets a little boy working hard at a very young age, helping out his parents to pay back a loan shark. Everyone tells Jack to look at Marco as an example for how to be a hard worker. I don't have the time to talk about how that is messed up, and instead of saying, wow, look at that child helping his family, we should be saying, why is a child having to help his parents at all? After getting fired from all his jobs, Jack is out sulking like a good lancer when he sees Marco going to a dueling statue. Carly explains to him that people go to the statue and leave cards to pray for what they want. Jack eavesdrops and hears that Marco is leaving his cards and praying for his family to be debt-free from a loan shark who tricked the family into signing a bogus contract, making it so that he could take whatever he wanted from the family without it affecting their debt at all. Marco's younger brother comes and calls him out for leaving his cards. He says that it's his dream to be a duelist and that he's leaving it all behind. Marco tells him that there are more important things than dueling, and that he values his family's livelihood over dueling. And this strikes a nerve with Jack. Jack was 17 when he decided to abandon everything he ever knew to go pursue his goal of dueling. Meanwhile, there's this kid, only a few years younger than Jack was at the time, and he's already figured out what he had to go through a lot of heartache to figure out. But also this makes Jack mad, because this kid is being forced to give something up, for something that he didn't even agree to. And it's when Marco says that his deck was too weak to win anyway that Jack decides to intervene. He walks up, takes the deck, and decides that he's going to take on the loan shark. Deal is, if Jack wins, he has to rip the contract for the loan of Marco's family. But if the loan shark wins, then he gets Jack's duel runner and his red dragon archfiend. The duel starts, and the loan shark's deck is one where he will put cards on the opponent's side of the field, and you have to pay life points in order to get rid of them. Otherwise, you take damage. Jack, ever arrogant, but has a point, says that he never agreed to take out these loans, and therefore is not going to pay them back. Ultimately, he uses Marco's deck and flips the loan monster's cards back to him and defeats the loan shark. And everyone's loans are forgiven. This duel is important because it shows that Jack is not only regretful of how he has lived his life, but how much he doesn't want other people to suffer like he has. He doesn't want somebody else to have to make a difficult decision the way he did. Jack is shown to be sympathetic towards children, which in real life is the bare minimum. Don't be a jerk to kids. But in storytelling, it shows a good person, and Jack putting himself on the line, using a kid's deck to show that he too can be great one day, is a pretty neat thing. He still can't keep a job, which I think that part is funny. And now on to something that feels like filler but isn't. While training for the next tournament arc, Crow and Yusei are bagging on Jack to use a Trust Guardian Synchro card in order to summon Red Dragon Archfiend. Jack says that he doesn't need this dumb card, that his cards work just fine. You see, Trust Guardian's effect is that when the Synchro monsters that it is used for would be destroyed, you can lower its attack points by 400 in order to keep it from being destroyed. They get on him because it is a better combo, and it would help more with the next tournament arc that's coming up, the Grand Prix. Which is true, the Grand Prix works like a relay, and when somebody loses, they pass it on to the next person, cards and all. And a weakened monster is better than no monster to pass on to the next team. Jack, however, says that his powerful monster doesn't need a tuner to help it. It's powerful enough on its own. In fact, he doesn't need teammates at all. He can win the entire tournament by himself. That night, the cops come and arrest him, saying that he has committed crimes. There's video evidence of him, his duel runner, and even his Red Dragon Archfiend. Instead of accepting help from his friends who could corroborate his alibi, he refuses their help and sends them away, saying he doesn't need to prove himself. His arrogance being his downfall, they declare it an open and shut case and arrest him. Cues a prison break, he escapes with all of his stuff and then runs into his doppelganger, which is actually a robot programmed with all of his old memories, but his former personality jacked up to 11, and then they duel. Jack has the chance to summon Red Dragon Archfiend right from the jump with the card that his friends gave him, and that would give him the advantage, but not wanting to taint his monster with a support card, he summons a lesser dragon instead. The main takeaway from this duel is that the doppelganger continues to taunt Jack, calling him weak, saying he's gone soft, saying that he's a shadow of his former self now. Which is interesting because everything we've seen so far from this episode is that Jack is falling back on his old ways whenever he starts to doubt himself. Jack starts to wonder if he indeed has gone soft, that against his will he has changed for the worse, and that he's not as strong as he used to be. The thing about growth is that you're never ready for it. It's always annoying and uncomfortable, but if you push through, you come across the other side better for it. But if you don't push through, if you run at the first sign of friction, then you revert back to your old ways, telling yourself that the change isn't really worth it. This mini arc makes the subtext into text, having the literal embodiment of his former self present, and showing him that in fact, yes, his former self was strong and powerful. And also, yes, his former self is more powerful than who he is right now, because who he is right now has not reached the other side of it yet. Where he is the center. He's at the crossroads. Jack can either return to his former self by committing to just power, or he can believe in the power of his friendship and use that to win out in tough situations. He has grown. He used Majestic Star Dragon to win against Carly. He sacrificed himself and left Yusei with a card that helped him win against God in the last arc. But those were out of necessity. Those were for greater good purposes. Now it's all about fame, money, and glory. But also he's at a point where he can throw away all the progress and return to how he used to be. Somebody who can do it all himself. His friends don't believe that Jack did the crime, so they investigate, free Jack from the prison that his robot clone was keeping him in. They have a rematch, and his robot clone brings out 3 different Red Dragon Archfiend cards, to which Jack uses only his one Red Dragon Archfiend card that has been fused with Trust Guardian to beat them all and burn them away with fake, thus clearing his name and making the decision that he will be a part of the team. He has chosen the path of friendship and has come out the other side stronger than he ever has before. The next time that Jack really gets the spotlight is when he's struggling to figure out what the next step for him is. How do you evolve as a duelist from here? But now he's accepted the power of friendship. But even then, that can only get you so far. So where do you go from here? What strategy do you use? How do you build upon that? He gets a call from an old friend, and then he drives his motorcycle all the way from Japan to Peru. I am so serious. I don't know what city New Domino City is based upon, but if it's in Japan and the Nazca lines are in Peru, and the Nazca lines are a big plot point in the first series, and the little kids called the Crimson Dragon Quetzalcoatl, then at the very least they're in Latin America. So they rode their motorcycles across an ocean to meet an old friend. While there, Jack gets tricked into a duel by a fire monster who promises him uncontested power if he can beat him. The fire monster ends up being a familiar of the Nova Devil monster thing, which was once called the strongest earthbound immortal that was defeated by the strongest signer, which honestly is such a stupid shonen anime thing. You beat the devil, and now here's his cousin Metatron, who has gone completely unmentioned up until now. Anyway, it turns out Jack is the reincarnation of that particular signer that beat the devil's big bad older brother and uses the power of friendship, aka the Crimson Dragon, and through sheer arrogance that would make Vegeta blush, he gets a new power-up called Burning Soul. And that lets him make new rules to the game and use 2 tuner monsters to synchro summon a Red Nova Dragon, a card that does not exist and literally has to be fabricated in real time. If you can tell, I really don't like this whole thing, but Nova Dragon is actually a pretty cool design, and I do appreciate that despite his redemption arc, Jack has not lost his bite, and that his continued solution to every problem he encounters is punch it harder. Except now, throughout the course of the story, he's gone from I will punch it harder alone to I will punch it harder with the help and encouragement of my friends. Fast forward through the tournament arc, and coming up on the World Racing Grand Prix is Jack's duel against Dragon, who has this really cool Norse mythology deck, and his particular ace card is Thor. Their comic relief character on the team is Loki, and their Yusei leader type has an Odin card. I really do love the character designs of these cards, and it sucks that we don't get to see more of them. These guys also have magic powers and tell Jack and his team that they will win, and they will be the ones to go on to duel against the big bad world-ending team of the season. Dragon says to Jack that he dueled him back when he was getting started, and Goodwin came to him and said that if he wanted his father's medical bills paid, then he would lose his duel to Jack on purpose. Ever since then, he's held a grudge, and he was forced to prove his worth overseas, and now he's returned home to reclaim the glory that was taken from him way back when. This really shakes up Jack's confidence. Suddenly everything is a lie, and he starts to wonder if everything he has built has been a lie. Jack now has to contend with the fact that everything he had done up until that point hadn't been for anything. Leaving his home, betraying his friends, all for the chance to be the very best, now suddenly has meant nothing. He didn't have to be good. Goodwin just needed a pawn that would do what he needed, and Jack just happened to fit that role. All of his bravado has been built upon the fact that despite being from the satellite, once he got the chance to prove his worth, he rose to the top. The sting is worsened because Dragon was forced to make the same impossible choice that he had to make because of a lack of money. We've already talked about how Jack doesn't care for money because the lack of it is what caused the problems in his life, but now he's on the opposite side of it. For once, somebody else's lack of money was to his benefit, and the dissonance is too much for him to handle. Their rematch starts, and on their first turn, they draw the same exact cards that they drew during their last duel, which is an aspect I really love. Now is the chance to see what could have been without Goodwin's interference. They play the first couple of turns exactly as they happened the first time, but now nothing is holding him back. Dragon counters with the trap card he had set down before but didn't activate. The trap card leads to a cascading effect that lets him get the advantage for most of the duel. However, the way Jack plays in duels in reaction to that is what allows him to eventually win. He has learned to play support cards, he has learned to play defensively, and not fight battles that he can't win. But eventually he builds up enough power that allows him to punch through and win. This show deals a lot with fate and destiny, and it's interesting how it happens here. If Dragon hadn't thrown the duel against Jack, he wouldn't have the money for his dad's surgery. He wouldn't have found the Thor God card. He wouldn't have found the friends that he has. Jack has also changed as a person, because if he had kept with his old self, with his old power through everything, then he wouldn't have won this. He would have lost in his first duel in the pro circuit. But also, for this change to take place, everything had to have happened the way that it did, including being a puppet for Goodwin. It's through these circumstances that Dragon and Jack have become the best versions of themselves. And those are the versions that duel each other now, and honestly is one of the more interesting duels throughout the series. I love this whole bit. It seems at first like it's rehashing old ground, but really it's just building upon it again. Jack kind of takes a back seat for the rest of the series. Even though you probably noticed that besides the filler arc, there hasn't really been too much to read into after the Dark Signer arc. He has a cool moment with Leo and Luna where he motivates Leo to come back to life after dying and win a duel, but other than that, all he does is give Yusei the Red Dragon Archfiend card to use against the final big bad. However, once they're done with that and suddenly realizes, wait, we've saved the world twice now before we even turn 20. Now what do we do? Everyone is deciding what to do with their lives because, everybody needs to figure out what they're going to do at 19 for the rest of their lives. I say this with the snark of a 30-year-old watching a cartoon meant for 12-year-olds, but I do remember what it was like being at that age and wondering where you're going with your life. Honestly, sometimes I still feel that way. Mark Twain once said, "History never repeats itself, but it often rhymes." And that's what's happening here, where we see a montage of all the characters we've seen throughout the series losing duels, amazed by how well their opponent has dueled. Jack confronts Yusei, telling him that he wants to duel tomorrow, and he reveals that he was the one dueling all of their friends, and that he wants to be the very best in the world. He has accepted an offer to go duel in a pro league overseas, and that before he leaves, he wants to duel Yusei one last time to prove that he has grown and that he deserves this opportunity. Just like in the beginning, he has dueled everybody on the satellite just to reach a ceiling under which he couldn't grow anymore. And now he has reached a ceiling in this country and is now ready to take on the world. Jack's determination makes everyone uneasy, but it's actually very impressive. Because the one thing about Jack is throughout the series, he has been consistent in one thing. He wants to be the best. Everything he has done has been in favor of that. Saving the world has been an afterthought. So now that the world is at peace, everyone is wondering what they should do. The duel begins, and one of the cool things about this duel is that they both summon their ace dragons right away, and then the trap card sends them into the future, and they can't use their ace dragons for 3 turns. So now they're forced to use all these other techniques while riding through New Domino City and the satellite, returning to the roots of where they grow up, who they were before they got lucky and found these god cards. Being the best that he can be at that stage in life, Jack wants to leave and become even better. Yusei, however, is stuck and can't make a decision. He arguably has more pro duel offers than Jack, so he can take his pick of what he wants to do. Or should he stay and reclaim the place that he was actually born in? His birthright of New Domino City that was taken from him. Their duel, though, this time isn't bitter. It's not under any world-ending stakes. There's no anger driving them to actively want to hurt the other one. It really is them just figuring out their place in the world, deciding how they want to grow. I've said it before, but it bears repeating. Dueling is the only thing Jack knows how to do. And so this duel is important to him because he needs to know where he stands with his power. Is he entering this new league in search of a new goal? Or is he using this league as a stepping stone to become better so that one day he can finally beat Yusei? Throughout the duel, both of them having learned from each other. Jack plays more support cards to help his monsters become stronger just like Yusei does. And Yusei plays more aggressively just like Jack does. In the end, the reason Yusei wins is not because of his Stardust Dragon card, but with Junk Warrior, the card he was using when he lost to Jack the first time. The card that used balance, which is what Jack told him to do way back before the series started. A card that has used the power of friendship to create something that is greater than the sum of its parts. Jack gracefully accepts his defeat and promises to come back stronger, so that one day he will defeat Yusei. Yusei smiles at that promise. Come back, because Yusei has decided to stay in New Domino City, and make it a better place to come back and visit now that all of his friends are gone. The series ends with the Crimson Dragon taking back the signer marks from everybody. Its job being done, no longer needing child soldiers to do its bidding. What is a good rival character if not somebody who makes the main character better? That is why Jack is such a good rival and goes through such great character development while not losing his bite. I love his character so much. His theatrics, his arrogance, it's just honestly so much fun. In some news that's not good for my procrastination, there's going to be a structure deck released in June about Jack. It is called Pulse of the King, and one of the cards is called Everyone's King. Human, 3,000 attack points, 2,500 defense points. Though he was a foolish king that threw away his hometown and friends, his damaged heart was saved by a truly caring heart. The man who has chosen to live according to his destiny will surely one day become a true king that will save the world and be beloved by all, granting happiness to everyone. Cannot be used in a duel. I am glad that he is finally getting the love that I have been championing for years. With a shonen anime, it's easy to get into a repeating pattern, and a lot of the stuff I didn't include in this video falls under that, but it does follow a logical progression. Progress is not linear. Sometimes you plateau, sometimes you fall back down and you have to relearn the same lesson. Sometimes you get outshined by a minor character and the editor sidelines you so that they can sell more toys of somebody else. The times he does get to showcase has more depth and more layers because of the foundation it was built upon. With a rival character, they're presented with only having flaws, which leaves you with nowhere to go but up. Or get a shovel and bury yourself deeper. But even then, so many rival characters fail to live up to themselves and end up just becoming a schoolyard bully hurling insults. But shocker, when you give them an arc to go through, then coming out the other side, you get some pretty powerful stuff.